Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, our subject tonight is of specific interest to people in the SCA, but also of general interest, I think, to people outside the SCA because it fits into a larger context. And the SCA specific thing we're going to talk about is a vigil for elevation to a peerage. But this fits in the larger context of what are referred to as rites of passage. And rites of passage are typically viewed as either secular or sacred, religious. Sometimes there's a mixing of the two. Typically, rites of passage are what are known as preliminal, that is before, that's the separation from the previous stage of a person's life, then the transitional phase, and then the incorporation into the new station. So, and
professional and
you're sure there's coming of age ones like bar mitzvah and quinceanera and debutante balls. There are religious ones like
also bar mitzvah.
So it can be both. Circumcision, first communion, confirmation. Those there are military ones like boot camp, which is definitely a separation and then ends with that incorporation into the new station. There's I remember my father telling me about an equator crossing ceremony. I have the certificate from when he was on a troop ship in World War II and crossed the equator, and that was a ceremony. There are academic ones like graduation and hazing, which are,
well, I mean, you could consider a dissertation a rite of passage in a way.
The defense of it. There's the professional ones like a white coat ceremony for medicine. There's various belt ceremonies for in martial arts, belt ranks. A hockey player scoring his first goal generally keeps the puck, things like that. But the belt ceremony in martial arts is, the SCA is a martial sport, but a society, secular, but it has, there's knighthood, semi-military sort of, because knights were not religious, but there are people, knighthoods used to be, and peerages were. So in that larger context of the separation, the transition, and the incorporation into the new station, we can talk about vigils for peerage in the SCA and how that fits in the context of this. And that's the introduction.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
It's been great.
Yeah.
So let us transition first into what are you drinking?
Well, I have tonight in my magic disappearing glass. This is Esperal. This is a Portuguese rosé. It's slightly sparkling, what I would term frizzante. Using the Italian word, I don't know what the Portuguese word for that, slightly effervescent. You can see by the color, it's not. I've characterized sometimes the French rosés as so subtle they practically disappear. Generally prefer the Italian or Italian style rosés. like from like a Rosé de Sangiovese, which is the primary grape in Chianti, one of the primary grapes, and much more robust in flavor, but lighter in body than a red. And this one is very nice. They make a frizzante white as well. This is their rosé,
It
and
looks delightful. It's a nice
it's
color.
very tasty, very refreshing. And what are you indulging your adult taste in beverages with this evening?
I've just quickly made myself a dark and stormy in a highball glass because I didn't have a like a copper mug or anything handy. So that certainly isn't necessary to the experience, but
Yep.
it's a dark rum, the Kraken, and
Okay. Yep.
and my preferred ginger beer, the Fever Tree
Oh,
brand.
very good.
Nice and spicy.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So the vigil from the SCA standpoint really marks the sort of first official thing that you're going to do before you take on the burden, let's say the responsibility of being a peer of the society.
Mm-hmm.
And the vigil's really not something you, or lately, not something so much you do as something that is done to you or done for you. You're mostly a spectator in your own vigil.
Well, and that's what they become, where you sit and people come in and give you advice, and there are lots of people who have arranged things for you. That's not always been the case. It's still not always the case.
No, it's just most common.
Yes, there are some where the person who was going, the vigilant,
Mhm.
the person who was going to be elevated, took a more active hand in designing a ceremonial part to go with the vigil. So it wasn't just a lineup of people eating food and giving them advice, which it often is. The vigilant sits and there's a book and people write something in it, and there's a spread of food, and it's a lot like a bar mitzvah in a lot of ways. There's
Well,
food and you sit and you have to listen to advice from people, and but there have been others that have been more people. The vigilant has taken a more active role. My well, I was, I think, the first knight in the Middle Kingdom, where we are, who was not put on vigil and then elevated the same day. It was 3 weeks, and during that time, I was able to get use of a small chapel,
right.
where
I
I
remember.
laid out my armor and had friends with me, and some knights came and spoke with me, and I stayed up all night, and I was going to go then to armored practice the next day, but I decided it's my first peer-like decision. I would go home and sleep so I wouldn't end up not hurting myself. So I had more of a say in that, and people can do that too.
Yes.
Because it is the ceremony, the elevation ceremony itself, there are more traditions surrounding that, although that varies from kingdom to kingdom within the SCA. But the vigil itself has become, well, this is in a relatively short amount of time became, well, this is what we've always done, except it's not. So
No. Well, and I think that the elevation of peers in general, I think in the society, at least in the Middle Kingdom, which is where I have the majority of my experience, is it's become a celebration of the entire community that had anything to do with this person's achievement. And the vigil it has become an extension of that. And people can do what they want to do. It's their day. It's a very special occasion. It's often a once in a lifetime occasion. And people want to mark it. And I understand that. But some of the elevation ceremonies of peers have become grander than some coronations of royalty that I've seen.
Yeah, well, when the is there a member of, are there members of the various orders of peers to speak for this person, and a member of the populace, and a member of the, and so on and so on. And
Well,
one of the first decisions I've told people, I said, one of your first decisions as about to be made peer is deciding who's going to speak for you. And
or
but
not.
it should, or not. You don't have to do that.
Right.
But if you do that, it should be limited. It should not be 6 people from every order. And the whatever order it is, the person who is begging the boon is of that order and
represents that
order, and everybody else who is there present from that order is representing the order. You don't need additional people to speak for you from that order.
Right.
And I think sometimes people do that because they don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. They don't want to leave anything out. They don't want to, well, that's the decision though. You're getting married, let's say. Who's your best man? Who's the lady in waiting, or
maid of honor,
or lady in waiting, the
maid of honor.
Maid of honor. Sorry, I'm confusing my my spheres here.
In some, who's going to give the bride away,
right?
In some occasion.
And so the question is, well, I've seen wedding ceremonies with like it seemed like dozens of attendants.
Oh yeah.
On either side, and that's too much.
Well, and
I think the analogy is, in an elevation ceremony, you can overdo it too.
Well, yes, and processions of dozens of people, your entire barony processing in with you as when you're called in as a candidate. That I don't, like I said, it's become a celebration of the entire community. Like, local boy makes good, right? And everybody wants to be a part of that. And I understand that, but it, to me, loses some of the focus of what's happening in that particular ceremony.
Right. And now that is as we said, that's if the putting on vigil, someone on vigil, is the separation ceremony, the vigil is part of the transition, and then, or the vigil is bridges between the separation and the transitional,
right?
And then the elevation ceremony is transitional, and something like a first peerage meeting is the incorporation part,
right? So, and yeah, I mean, you could almost say that it's like the bachelor party, except completely the opposite of a bachelor party.
The vigil.
Yeah. I mean, it's where you're supposed to be contemplating, or
right, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be thinking seriously,
right,
about this.
And other cultures will have different customs surrounding the night before a wedding, for the bride and the groom, and who they are supposed to be with and what they're supposed to eat and drink. I mean, it can be very ritualistic.
Ke-
Our-
I think one of the things to keep in mind though is that you and I can inject our own taste or sensibilities into our comments here. But it should be up to the person who's being elevated to make certain decisions.
certain
However,
decision. Yes.
yes, however, certain decisions, just like a wedding, however, people will assume this is what they have to do. And I know that, and we just celebrated our 25th anniversary. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And I remember when we talked about getting married, said a short ceremony, a party, and then we're flying to Italy for 3 weeks. It was, we are not doing imprinted napkins and imprinted matchbooks and and stuff like that. We're not doing that. I
Right.
designed some invitations myself, printed them myself, sent those off. We're just not doing, we don't have to. We don't
Right.
feel obliged to conform to those expectations for weddings that have become an industry.
Now, but that was your second wedding. What was your first wedding like? I was not at that one.
It had more of those things.
I would have thought so, knowing your first wife.
Yes. And her family.
Yeah, and well, that's and what I have come
I
to
liked
know
her
about
family, but yeah. But there were more of those things. And honestly, I didn't really I
Well, same
it
was
was
true when
just,
I got married. We didn't.
yeah, it was
You
what it
recall
was.
our wedding was a party interrupted briefly by a wedding ceremony.
Yeah, exactly. So, but having been through both experiences, I think that there was a lot that there's a lot that people think has to be done that doesn't necessarily have to be done. And I know you and I both think about what is the meaning of something at its core. Let's keep the core of the meaning and strip away the parts that are extraneous that have been added on that aren't necessarily meaningful, but keep the core meaning. And so with the vigil, the core part of the meaning is the person sitting and contemplating their change of station, getting advice from people,
Right.
um,
Or at least hearing experiences that they can
hearing
draw.
counsel, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's it. That's the core part of it. The food, the, oh, here's a book for people to sign, here's all of that, is have been added on to
Right.
that. But those are not part of the core experience. Okay, we're going to have a bunch of people here. It's, oh, well, let's be hospitable and have food. Oh, we're going to have food. I'm going to show off how much food I can make, and I want to contribute, and I want to be part of this, and I'm going to make food, and you know, my knighting, I didn't have new garb. I had a white tabard I put over my garb, and that was
As did I.
it. And I did make myself a pair of shoes, so that there'd be a pair of period shoes in the. I didn't do a very good job. They were more like swim fins. But
I think I was wearing my own shoes I had made also for my knighting. not for any particular reason, but
right.
I think I had made them sometime previous, but
But the transitional function of the vigil is the contemplation,
right.
and that's aided by advice, counsel from people who have something to offer. Those are the core things that
Well,
are
there's another aspect of it. You attended my vigil, and I didn't do exactly what you did, but I got a friend of ours got me a room in a clubhouse, neutral ground. And
Mhm.
I invited knights in this from the surrounding groups and local people to come, and we all just sat and had a kind of roundtable discussion rather than having
Sure.
one person at a time. And the back and forth between people was as interesting as what they had to tell me.
And that's essentially the same. It's a different method of delivering the counsel, and that interactive method I think is great. I mean, I think that's a great way to do it.
But for my purpose was also there was a deeper part of the purpose for me, because for me it wasn't just here's what you need to do to prepare yourself. It was tell me whether convince me I want to do this
Mm.
at all. And because when you go up for your ceremony, the king asks for your knighting. The king asks, "Do you wish to do this? Do you wish to take on this burden?" And you have to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And
Well, and that's with any peerage. They ask
true,
you.
yeah. But I'm saying, so there is a more than zero chance that someone could say, "Nah, it doesn't sound like it's for me."
I think that's happened before.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know of any, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I don't know of any instances when it has happened that way in court. I think there are, I know that there are cases where people have said, no, I'm not ready for this at this time. And so they were like infinitely on vigil
Yeah.
or so um or were put on it expired at the end of the reign, they were put on vigil again or something like that after a while, after they decided they were ready for it, it was offered again.
But
But
so that's also a question
yeah,
that one should ask oneself is, am I prepared? What must I do to prepare? What, not just what it means to make the change, but is this a change that's going to be right for me and for the order, or whatever. I think there are many larger questions that aren't asked. And I was going to say that as far as the ceremony too, in that yeah, including other people and having a vigil where everybody contributes in some way, and the ceremony, the actual ceremony itself has an aspect of just like a wedding, where you invite people to a wedding. You don't want to have them, or one should think about making one endure an ordeal.
I've been to
And
some weddings where the ceremony was very long.
oh yeah, well, I've got to have this. My niece has to sing this song, and we're gonna have this guy has come to play a song between every prayer, and we're gonna have 6 prayers because all of my sisters need to stand up and say what it. After a while, your audience is lost. Now, a wedding isn't supposed to be an entertainment. I
Right.
I understand that, but geez, I mean,
Well,
think
then
about
there
it.
is a
These are a few friends.
there is there is a term bridezilla,
Yeah.
and for the again comparing it, there's I don't know of a vigilant zilla. I've never heard that, but um because of what peerage is supposed to represent, and the qualities somebody should have to be put on vigil and elevated, that shouldn't happen. They shouldn't
Well,
be,
humility, you'd think.
yeah, well, they shouldn't be so focused on themselves that that they
They should
make
be,
the whole experience an endurance for everybody else, and something to endure for everybody else.
I was just at Pennsic. I was required to sit through a 45-minute peerage ceremony.
That seems a bit excessive.
It was, and
I've said before that, and it's actually something I've studied in screenwriting, studying screenwriting, pacing, and also the notes in drama and comedy and plays and other things. 20 minutes are there. People there. In fact, if you're with a group of people, a party or just a table, a conversation, something, about every 20 minutes there'll be a lull in the conversation, and then it will start back up. It seems to be a natural rhythm, and if you it shouldn't be more than 20 minutes. If it's less than that, fine, because if you go past that, now everybody's got to go into that second 20 minutes. I mean, that's a power nap.
yeah,
There's a 20-minute power nap, a double 20-minute power nap, so 40 minutes. And a 20-minute power nap, I can come out of it refreshed. A double, I'm groggy. And if I go longer than that, I'm out for, so.
Well, and the 20-minute thing, it's not that you can't hold people's attention for more than 20 minutes. Obviously, every movie is more than 20 minutes. You have to punctuate their attention.
Yes. And I know you and I have talked about court and the theater of court before, and how to pace it so that it keeps people's attention, and something serious, something funny, something touching, something exciting, something moving, and
something surprising.
How you pace those notes is and keep people's attention. And so in the vigil itself, there are people who will go into a vigil and say, I don't have anything to say. I just want to, yeah, no, you're fine. Good.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And then they will stay there and talk for half an hour.
I will occasionally go into a vigil, and I have a couple of pat pieces of advice that are just sort of pithy things that I have found to be true.
Never eat broccoli with a stranger.
Don't wear white shoes after Labor Day.
Yep.
No, mostly they are. One of them is develop a purposeful stride. Number one, as a peer. And second one is about polling and that
bowling.
Yeah, the peerage polls that you get.
Oh, I thought you said bowling.
Bowling, no. I have no advice to give on bowling. Actually, I'm an instinctive and terrible bowler.
No.
So, but so I give those two pieces of advice right up, and then sometimes I'll ask them a question or two. How do you think your SCA experience is going to change after tomorrow or tonight or whatever? That I'll ask that and see if have you thought about it? Have you decided how you're going to approach being a peer? So
I will tell them a story about how shortly after I was knighted, I made a suggestion to a list table about how to speed up the tournament I was at, because it was going to run, it was running long, it was going to delay the feast, and it was going to cause problems. And they said, yes, sir, and did it, because they perceived me as giving them an order, not making a good suggestion. And I realized the weight of my words had additional weight. And so that's something I always impart to people. This transition into this new stage, with every new honor, every new recognition, your words have additional weight, and words can hurt, or they can heal, or they can cause problems, or they can help. And as a peer, you should be a problem solver, not a problem causer. And that's one of the things I tell people, because it's to contemplate and consider the transition. And that's what the vigil is for, between stages in this extended rite of passage.
Right. So we've got humility, honesty.
Yes.
You need to look at yourself honestly.
And which takes courage.
Yes.
To do so.
We've established.
um,
franchise
Franchise.
in some ways. Going forward from that point, you have to speak truthfully to the crown.
And you have the simultaneous duty and authority to act for the good. You cannot turn away. If you see something that's being done that is unsafe or wrong or discourteous, you are required to. You have the obligation to, but you also have the opportunity to speak up and address that with courtesy, but also strength and generosity and propriety and fortitude and loyalty, and all those things. All the people should be considering all the virtues, if they have not yet at this time. And although we've mentioned the knighthood several times, this is true for any peerage, and I think it's true for any person, that people should be thinking about these things. This is a matter of transition into adulthood. So many of the ceremonies, the coming of age ceremonies, are not always focused on those chivalric virtues, which that we talk about. But that's really what, for me, what a coming of age ceremony really is that you are stepping into adulthood, into accepting that you are responsible to uphold the ideals of the society that you are in.
Well, yeah, and it's about being taught your responsibilities, and in many cultures, testing whether you can live up to them.
Yes.
And sometimes the test has become so ritualized that it's just you've got to go up here and knock on this thing, and it represents this older test, where it wasn't simply, you've got to go up the mountain, kill a bear and skin it and bring it back to the village before you're a man, kind of thing.
You have to jump, you have to do the ground jumping thing. You tie the vines to your ankles and jump off the thing, and if you don't die, congratulations.
Well, that particular ritual, like many rites of passage, is mostly a test of courage.
Right.
very few injuries. Amazingly, very few injuries result from that particular thing. We watched it as kids, like on National Geographic, right? And our parents were all worried that we were going to go out and try it. but they had a system, a generations old system
Yes.
of, you tied this vine in a particular way, and it had a certain amount of elasticity, and you knew exactly how long to make it. And the idea was that you jump off of this tower head first, and this vine tied to your ankle saves you from dying. You might get hurt. You might get a bruise or a bump, or you might, scrape yourself up, but you weren't going to die. They were not trying to kill off their men.
Right.
They needed them to survive. So, but the just like boot camp in many ways, many of the exercises in boot camp are not just to test whether you can do it, but to prove to you that you can do it.
Right.
So, and that is where we get rite of passage still exists in kind of that way, in that you're not expected to fail necessarily,
Right.
but it's a thing you must go through to develop the confidence to go on.
And passage means passage from one stage to another.
Right.
And there was a book, it's gotta be 30, 40 years old now, called Passages. And I think the author revisited it. And it was about stages of life transitions.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading that and reading it when I was young, getting to a certain point and not really understanding it. And I think I should reread it at this point. I think the vigil is useful. I know that sometimes it's dispensed with. And even when it is not the first peerage that a person has, it still can be useful, I think, because it is that transitional stage.
Right.
And I think that's useful as a separation, rather than in one fell swoop before and after.
Well, giving someone the opportunity, or making it plain that before now you were this thing, after this you are something else, and you have to learn how to step into that role.
Mhm.
And mostly what we claim in society is that we don't make people something, we recognize that they have already become something.
Right.
And that kind of eases that passage, if you will. That a lot of times the advice is, you know what to do, you just
Right.
have to keep doing it. Here a lot of advice is, here are some pitfalls that you may not have realized.
Right.
But
and I know that I've heard more than once from undergraduate students, well, this isn't how we did it in high school. And it's like, you're correct, because you're not in high school anymore. You are now an undergraduate at a university, and it's done differently. And I'm here to help you transition into taking more responsibility for the quality of your own work, rather than giving you questions from the end of a chapter in a book. I always hated those because they were usually terrible. They've gotten better over the years as textbooks have gotten better, but say, no, we're doing this differently, because you are now more responsible for your own education and the quality of your own work. So it's transitional. And then when I've got graduate students, it's even more so. It's
right.
The directions tell you which way to go, but not how far to go. So meet the specifications, but exceed the expectations, And you are responsible. I don't give people, even undergrads, certainly not graduate students, but undergraduates, I don't tell them how long an assignment should be.
It just has to accomplish
It
these
has to
things.
be long enough to be thorough and not so long that you're being redundant or putting in filler that's meaningless. You're responsible for the quality of your work because I'm trying to transition them to that. It's got to be this many pages. It's got to be this many words.
Yeah, high school in many ways is just teaching you, well, you're supposed to be learning facts. In the past, it was you're supposed to be learning how to find things out, to how to study. And in some ways, the discipline to do homework and studying and writing an essay that's this long is just about discipline. You don't, you have to go home and spend this much time doing this thing until you're done. I've got to sit down and write these pages until I have written all the pages, and then I can stop.
Right.
So, that's just learning that teaching yourself that you can do the thing. You can get through it all. You can sit for that long without needing a distraction. Some people don't learn that.
Yes. I have actually said to my students, I've talked to them also about good ergonomic work habits in a way that they never got in before. Well, they never got anywhere else as far as I know. But if they're undergrads and they're going to go into the professional world, I want them to understand as they get older that they have to take care of their own physical body to be able to keep working. So get up once an hour, get up, stand up, walk around for 5 minutes, look out the window into the distance to refresh your eyes, and don't look at a screen, don't check your messages, just do that and then go back to work. Work in single tasking. On the, focus on this thing to the exclusion of anything else. Don't have no music. You can put some, not if you're writing, I put music on, but not with words,
Okay.
just instrumental. I got in the habit of doing that in an office so that I was with earphones, so that it was a barrier
right
from distraction, and focus on what you're doing. I've actually challenged them to sit for a minute with their eyes closed but not falling asleep, with not moving, not speaking, not fidgeting, no radio, no TV, nothing, for a minute, and then try for 2 minutes, and then try for 5 minutes, and try for 10 minutes and 20 minutes. And the idea of doing that freaks them out. And in the time I've been teaching, only one student, maybe two, has said that sounds like meditation. So that's exactly what it is.
Congratulations.
But it freaks them out. They're not used to that stillness. And I think the next time I'm sitting in a vigil, I may invite the vigilant to close their eyes and sit and think quietly without the distraction, without talking, and do that, and just focus on the breathing and think, and just keep coming back to the breathing. They'll have a lot of thoughts coming in, but just find that calmness in the breathing, and learn how to do that. That's
in fact, I was going to mention that is I found in some vigils I've been in, that I've gone to and sat in, that it struck me that the person I was talking to was was remarkably uncomfortable just sitting by themselves. That
Yeah.
they had little experience with sitting and focusing on a conversation with one person. It was a skill that they had never really developed.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's like, wow, you're really having a hard time just keeping focused on the person talking to you, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
I tell my students, when you're talking to somebody, look right here, the point between their eyebrows. Because
yeah,
if you try looking in their eye and then the other eye, you'll be going back and forth and you will look shifty-eyed, what's known as shifty-eyed, and untrustworthy. But if you look right here, they will see you as looking them in their eyes and being paying close attention to them. So
yeah,
So
it's a good trick.
Yep.
We wandered a little bit as we
I think
tend to,
so, but transitions,
and preparation,
preparation,
contemplation.
and I think that so next year will be have the 40th anniversary of my knighting, and I may sit a vigil
Oh,
again in that, because I want to contemplate things, and what I don't want is well, I don't want people coming in and just saying, I don't need to hear flattery. You know,
right.
I don't want that. And that's, people often don't know the difference between flattery and positive
Well, there's
positive
praise and there's
positive
flattery.
feedback. Yes. So assuming that I'd get any. So
Well, and I think my 40th will be in 4 years. Yeah, 4 years.
yeah.
2026.
Yep.
Man, we've been doing this for a long time.
Yes, we have. I think we've about covered it then.
I think we have.
Okay.
We have.
Yep.
Oh, and I haven't even finished my drink yet. So we're doing better than
Well,
all.
I finished mine, so it's
Well, you only
we're
had
done.
like by the time we were able to start, you only had like 2 ounces left in your glass. So I started with a nice fresh highball, so I'm all right.
Yeah, well, I was waiting for you, so I had to do
I know, and
something,
that's my fault. That's my bad.
That's
I
okay.
apologize. I accept my
Yeah,
responsibility
okay.
for that.
So thank you, everybody. Please give us your suggestions. Please like, share, follow. And until we see you next time, be thou
A good night.
and true.